best movies of all time come from the 80s. And though some of the lessons they teach are a little bit cheesy and sometimes cliche, the lessons they teach are also valuable and can even apply to like us as college students. So today I'm going to try to convince you that some of these cheese-filled and corny films are actually important life lessons that we can learn, and we're going to start with The Breakfast Club. So if you've never seen it before, and if you haven't, you should watch it. The basic premise of this 1985 film is that there are 5 students from all different stereotypical backgrounds. There's a princess, a criminal, a basket case, a jock, and a nerd. And they're all in detention together on a Saturday, and they're all in there for different reasons. And they start out seeming really separated and distant from each other, and they don't really understand where they all come from. But throughout the movie, they start to talk, and even though they argue and everything throughout, they do start to appreciate more where their detention mates come from. But if you're wondering, the movie doesn't end with them all being lifelong friends and galloping off into the sunset. However, it does end with more respect between the different groups, although we do never get to see the school day that played out the following Monday. So a glaringly obvious lesson we can take away from The Breakfast Club is to avoid judging others based on the box that they seem to fit in. Especially in college, at least in my experiences, it seems that a lot of these stereotypical boxes that I could categorize people into in high school are a lot less important. So even though I was a 3-sport athlete in high school and I fit in pretty well with the jocks at my school, most of my friends here never played sports, and I find that I get along with them even better than I ever did with my friends in high school. So The Breakfast Club gives us a glimpse of what happens when the walls of those stereotypical boxes are broken down, and what happens is mutual respect and understanding. And I think we can apply this to the TLC too, because we strive for collaborative learning here, and in order to accomplish this goal, we have to first break down those barriers that stereotypes create. So the second lesson I think we can pull from The Breakfast Club is that sometimes you just have to admit that you've made a mistake and accept the punishment for what you've done. And in the best case scenario, you might just learn something from it. So although all 5 of them really didn't want to be there, obviously, all day on a Saturday, locked up in their school library, they learned a lot about not only themselves, or not only the other students, but also themselves. The mistakes they made were not only the acts that got them in detention in the first place, but also the misconstrued ideas they had about their peers. So again, a cliche, but learning from your mistakes is a way to grow, and mistakes are going to happen in college. However, it's what a person takes away from those mistakes that counts. So next, although a quick summary won't do this 1987 film the justice it deserves, The Princess Bride is a story about a beautiful young woman named Buttercup who falls in love with a common farm boy named Wesley. Wesley leaves the farm to earn a fortune so he and Buttercup can marry, but soon Buttercup hears that the dread pirate Roberts has killed Wesley. She's devastated, but she agrees to marry Prince Humperdinck, even though she doesn't love him, as he is allowed by law to choose any unmarried woman to be his wife. So Wesley returns, and he's alive, obviously, but he's in disguise as the dread pirate Roberts himself, and kidnaps Buttercup from 3 other men who had originally kidnapped her from the kingdom. She eventually realizes that the second man who has taken her is Wesley, and Humperdinck tracks them and ultimately takes Buttercup back and plans to marry her, and he tortures Wesley almost to death. But long story short, Wesley makes a miraculous recovery, and he saves Buttercup, and the two end up together, their final scene concluding with a passionate kiss. So one important lesson to learn from The Princess Bride is that things aren't always as bad or as hopeless as they may seem. In the film, Inigo and Fezzik, 2 of the original kidnappers who end up joining Wesley in attempting to save Buttercup, declare that Wesley is dead. However, Miracle Max tells them that Wesley is only mostly dead, which means he is slightly alive. By transforming the negative of mostly dead into a little positive of slightly alive, Miracle Max transformed the seemingly hopeless situation into something that was at least somewhat hopeful. This same principle can be applied to many different situations in college, including maybe a paper. If a paper we're writing seems completely hopeless, we can try to transform the idea of it in our minds into something that's only mostly hopeless, which means it's slightly hopeful, and work our magic to turn it into something completely hopeful. Another spoiler, Wesley ends up living after being only slightly alive, so that's a good sign for the only slightly hopeful paper. So a final 1986 film that I would be remiss to omit in this discussion details a day in the life of a high school student who decides to skip class and explore the city for the day. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The main life lesson that this film teaches is not to take life too seriously, that it's okay to let loose and enjoy yourself a little bit. I think that this idea is a lot of what college is about, finding that perfect balance between fun and seriousness, and also finding times when the two can combine. Now, I'm in no way condoning skipping classes, making phony phone calls, or stealing cars by advocating the lesson that the film teaches, but I do think we could learn a thing or two from Bueller. He knows how to use his imagination, and that's a valuable gift that we don't want to lose in the jumble of everything else we have to deal with in college.